Hi guys, I hope you're well. If you don't know who I am, my name is Thomas Blakemore and I'm a teacher in Dubai. I am back in the same room I started this YouTube channel with about 3 years ago. Now, being back here made me think about the feelings that I had when I first got my job teaching in Dubai. So when I first got my job, I was really excited, but then I was immediately struck by some feelings of anxiety. I wasn't really sure what to do. When I moved out there, I didn't have that information to hand to inform me about the teaching process and all the different things I needed to do when I got out there to Dubai. So I decided to go away and create something to hopefully help people who may be going through similar feelings and similar processes that I went through when I moved out to become a teacher in Dubai and the UAE. So I decided to make this, and this is what I wanted to talk about during this video. This is my new guide that's going to be specifically related to supporting you with the process of moving out to the UAE. So you've got your job, what to do when you move out there, both before you go and after. So let's start off in the contents page and talk through some of the many sections that are within the guide. So as I said, it's kind of split into two parts. You've got part one that's before you go, talking about all the things that you need to do before you go. And then you've got part two, which is, you've caught the plane, you land at the airport, now what? So to start off with, go into the contents page. What I like about the contents page is it's all hyperlinked. It took a long time, but if you need to go, for example, to the attestation part, you can just tap it and it will take you straight through. I obviously talk about why and how to use the guide, but the first section that's really important to use is the attestation. That's something that can be quite tricky to start off with, understanding the attestation process. I've got some different tips within that section to help you with that, what you need to do, and potentially getting other people involved to support you with that process. From there then, we move through that to talking about traveling as a family. If you are happening to travel as a family, some of the additional paperwork that you might need to get attested and some of the additional paperwork that you might just need full stop. And then obviously one of the big things that I get asked about all the time, you can feel free to check out my other video about what to pack. I'll leave that one up there. It's a really fun process, but it's also quite stressful, thinking about, well, what is it I need to pack? Thinking about casual clothes and professional clothes, what's the professional dress code? So I've spoken more about the information about what to pack here. So I've got a specific packing list and you can check that out for free. I'll leave that in the description, but it's more about the information of why you need to pack certain things and the dress code. So talking about the fact that some schools, depending on your school, will need females to cover all the way up to their wrists and ankles, depending on the type of school, and so on and so forth. Talking about the paperwork that you might need, but also just some of the additional items that I struggle to find out in the UAE too. Now, for some people, they might end up with lots of different things that they want to bring over. So you might want to send items to the UAE. So there's a specific section related to what you can send to the UAE, what things are prohibited, and additionally companies that can support you with the process of sending things to the UAE. From there then, we're going to be moving on to money. Money is a really important thing because it takes a while to get your bank account sorted. Again, a section later on. But you're going to need that travel money. So obviously you can just take cash, but it can be quite risky to just take cash with you. So talking about different cards that you might want to take, things like Monzo, Revolut, Starling, those are the cards that I really advise. That makes it a lot easier when you're out there initially before you get that bank account to do those things and just be able to spend money easily without worrying about the exchange rates and things like that. From there, we've got a little section that's all about things that you want to consider before you move to the UAE. Certain things such as making sure you got your family visas sorted, telling student finance, that's a whole other issue. I could probably make a whole different video about that. Cancelling existing utilities, whether it's your water bills, electricity bills in properties that you might have here in the UK or your home country, whether you need to sort out your pension, thinking about travel insurance for when you first get there. There's a really good section about VPNs. It's probably one of my favorites because it's really important to be able to contact home and things like that. It's a bit of a grey area and the guide does a really good job of talking about that grey area, but also giving some advice about VPNs when you're out there. Before you go, you're going to want to know a little bit more about the UAE. I'm sure you've probably done research, whether it's watching some of my videos or other videos about the UAE, but there's a really strong section about the culture of the UAE, information about specific Emirates, because a lot of people just think Dubai is a country, and giving that additional information about the culture, the traditional dress, the laws that you need to consider, really important. All sorts of different things about that within the guide that you need to consider. Things about money and how the money is different, food and drink, traditional dress, as I said, religion, again, talking about the Ramadan period and how that differs in the UAE. Then after you've done that little bit of research about the UAE, we've got to that stage where everything's packed and you are off. You've gone to the UAE. So this is where part 2 kicks in. This is all about helping you with the setup process. Now, it can be initially a bit of a challenge. So we've got some tips for the first week to really help you. Things like setting up your phone, because you're going to want to make sure you've got that phone set up straight away, just in case you haven't got the Wi-Fi. So that's the first thing that comes up is SIM cards. From there, although it's not something you really need to worry about too much, there's information about getting your visa and your Emirates ID, just in case you wanted to know a little bit more about that process so it doesn't come as a shock. Certain things like having a blood test, because some people were suddenly shocked about that process when we went through it initially. So just making sure that you're aware of those different things that you might need to go through for your Emirates ID, photos, X-ray, all these different things that you perhaps won't already know. From there, we're talking about transport. There's a really good section on public transport. You're obviously going to want to move around the country that you've gone to. So whether that's public transport or setting up your own transport through renting cars, again, another section that's within the guide, and how you can get your UAE driving license once you've got your Emirates ID. So that's all spoken about. There's also a little bit of information about whether you want to rent a car, who to rent with, and also if you want to buy a car, the process that you need to consider when buying a car. Not that I've done it, but many people have. So there's lots of information about all the different steps that you will need to take, where to find the best cars, what to look for when you're looking at cars. That section is really in-depth to help you with transportation. Some of you will already have accommodation set up for you. If you haven't, please don't worry. There's a really strong section about accommodation and how to set up your own accommodation. There's also additional information about the areas where you can find accommodation. And there's also, this will be a really helpful thing, and this is something I need to stress with the guide, that you can then come back to, whether it's in a year or two's time, and for example, you've had your accommodation sorted for you and then you're transitioning into sorting your own accommodation, then that section is going to be really useful for you when you go, what do I need to do? Little tips that you need to consider when you're looking at apartments, because I've certainly made some mistakes in the past. And then other things that you need to do with the process of setting up your accommodation, things like Empower, DEWA if you're in Dubai, your Ajari to make sure your property is registered efficiently. So all those different things that you might need to consider when setting up your accommodation. So once you've set up your new accommodation, you're going to want to buy furniture. That was one of my favorite things to do when I first moved out there, is setting up that accommodation. So there's a whole thing about the different shops that you can go to, which ones are going to be most cost effective, where to find the best areas to buy furniture. That section's really in-depth and it's going to just help you save that little bit of money. For example, I went to Bizzle. You can see that on another video, and I bought lots of different furniture for my apartment, but that might not be the best thing for you. Homebox, for example, is a really good one that many people out here in the UAE still don't know about. So yeah, that's available there. Banks, you're going to need to set up your bank to obviously sort out accommodation. So you're going to need to make sure that that's sorted. You need that checkbook. So talking about which banks there are in the UAE, there's loads, and which ones might be best for you. Many people will come out to the UAE to earn additional income. You've obviously got that tax-free income, so you're going to want to send money home. So talking about international transfers, the different ways that you can send money home and what might be best for you. So that is available also within the guide. One of the big things that this guide aims to do is to save you money. So from there we move on to the general day-to-day bits and pieces, and obviously one of the big things from that to save money is food shopping. So talking about what I do in terms of trying to save money with food shopping, but also where to find things. I don't want you to go to a shop and realise that they don't have pork products, simply because that's some research that you've not quite had a chance to do. So for example, Spinneys and other shops sell pork products, so then you're not ending up at Carrefour and going, well, where's the sausages? So just making sure that you go to the right places, but also trying to make things cheaper for you so that that cost of living is a little bit lower, so you can save money to have those international transfers a little bit more frequently. Useful apps and social media. This is a section that is really in depth. There's loads of different really amazing apps here in the UAE to support you with saving money or just making your life a little bit more efficient. That's all integrated into the guide. I'm going to make a video all about money saving apps that I'll put up there too, so feel free to check that one out as well when you get a chance. There's loads of different apps and websites and things like that to consider in that section. I've just had to swipe through. Meeting people. It can be quite daunting when you first move out to the UAE. You know, you're alone and you perhaps don't know lots of new people. So it talks about different ways to meet people, whether that's for relationship purposes or just simple friendship purposes. There's lots of different things to consider. You might want to go through Facebook groups. There's different apps to look at. And again, that's a big section within the guide that can help you meet new people when you move out. So that brings me to the end of the guide. If you're moving to the UAE, I know that it's going to be super useful for you. This is the guide that I needed when I moved out to the UAE. It's going to save you money because it might make you aware of shops such as Homebox to save you money with furniture and other shops for food shopping. It's also going to save you some time so that you're not going to the wrong places, and it will also help you with the process of understanding things quickly so that you can get things sorted quickly, also saving you, hopefully, some stress. That guide is going to be available on my website, teachtraveltriumph.com/guide. There's lots of other guides on there if you're just interested in teaching in the UAE in the first place. Hopefully you found this video somewhat useful. If you have, feel free to like it and subscribe so you don't miss future videos talking about teaching and teaching in the UAE too. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, I'm out.